And I see a message about Chris from Chris in the chat. Oh, yeah, okay, great. Michael's here.
We're recording.
Oh, nice. Hey, Chris.
Uh, Hi. Oh, my audio is on. Hi there. How you doing?
Good, good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. It's been busy days these days.
Yeah, I mean, rank choice is making a lot of covering a lot of ground, so that's awesome to see and hear about.
Yeah. Hey, we're having a Halloween party. Check us out. It's gonna be November 1st. It's gonna be great.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I gotta check it out. All right. Well, I think we can just get started. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Good Gov LA discussion on ranked choice voting versus star voting. Good Gov LA, what we do is we bring people together to learn about and discuss local governance issues in a safe, nonpartisan space, working collectively towards better democracy in Los Angeles. Tonight, we have Arend Castellan from the Equal Vote Coalition making the case for star voting, and Steve Chesson from Californians for Electoral Reform making the case for ranked choice voting. Thank you both for joining us to have this fact-based conversation on alternative electoral systems. Quick run through of the agenda. First, we're going to do intros, which we're doing right now. Arend will introduce ranked choice voting. That's not a typo. And Steve will introduce STAR because they both know the other voting system so well. And I'll share a few advantages and potential drawbacks as well in that intro. Then Arend will give a 10-minute presentation on STAR. Steve will give a 10-minute presentation on ranked choice voting. And we'll go into a 10-minute fact check round where 4 facts pre-selected will be introduced and briefly debated by Arend and by Steve. Finally, we'll have 15 minutes at the end for questions. If you have questions as you see folks going, you can drop those in the chat, but they won't be replied to live. That will be saved for the end. So let's get started. So first want to clarify that we're going to be talking about single winner elections for this discussion. So non-proportional, there are proportional meaning that, say, for a given area, you have like 40% Democrat, 60% Republican, and then and there would be multiple candidates winning. So you would have maybe like 6 candidates winning, 6 Republicans elected, 4 Democrats, or something like that. With non-proportional, you can have either single or multi-winner election. But this will mostly be about non-proportional ranked choice or star voting, which would be for a single winner in most cases, unless stated otherwise. So to start with, what is ranked choice voting? Arend, all you.
Excellent. So with ranked choice voting, you're going to rank candidates in order of preference. Here's an example of your ballot. In the first column, you'd mark your favorite with your first choice as your first choice. And then in the second column, you're going to have mark your backup for who you'd want to win if your favorite can't make it. And then your third choice is the candidate you'd want to win if your top two can't win, and so on and so forth. This ballot has the voter ranking all the candidates, but the voter could rank as many or as few candidates as they'd like. We're going to go ahead and pull up the Candytown results to see an example of how ranked choice is tabulated. So with ranked choice, it's tabulated over the course of several rounds. In the first round, if no one gets a majority of the first choice votes, the candidate with the least first choice votes is eliminated, and their votes get transferred to their next rank if they have one. Or those voters' votes would get transferred to the next rank if they have one. This then repeats until one candidate has a majority of the remaining votes. Right? And if we can go back to round one, I'll kind of talk through the specific example. Excellent. So in this case, no candidate has a majority. Snickers has the most votes with 323, but that's short of the 513 votes that would be needed for a majority. So we start the elimination rounds. Skittles has the least first choice votes, so they get eliminated and their votes are transferred to their next choice if they have one. So here we see what happens when the net's transferred, and now Milky Way is at the bottom. And then we repeat with Milky Way being eliminated, and that process continues until we have Snickers as the winner at the end with the majority of the remaining votes. And that's how ranked choice voting works.
What is star voting, Steve?
Okay, thank you. STAR stands for score, then automatic runoff. The ballot lists the candidates and allows the voter to give each candidate 0 to 5 stars. In this example, we have 4 candidates: Anne, Bob, Carl, and Dave. Each voter gives 5 stars to the candidate or candidates that they like the best, no stars to the candidate or candidates they like the least, and 1 to 4 stars to all the candidates in between. They can give the same number of stars to more than one candidate. Next slide, please. Here we have 2 ballots. The top ballot is from a voter that gave Anne 5 stars because they really like Anne, Bob 4 stars, Carl 3 stars, and Dave no stars because they really don't like Dave. The bottom ballot is from a voter that gave both Carl and Dave 5 stars because they like both candidates the best equally, Bob 3 stars, and Anne no stars because they don't like Anne at all. In this example, 300 voters cast ballots like the top ballot, and 200 voters cast ballots like the bottom ballot. Tallying the ballots is a 2-step process. Next slide, please. In the first step, the scoring step, the scores, that is the number of stars that were given to each candidate, are added up to get a total score for each candidate. The 2 candidates with the highest scores, in this case Bob and Carl, advance to the automatic runoff step. Next slide, please. In the automatic runoff step, each ballot is counted for whichever of the 2 runoff candidates has more stars. In this example, the top ballot counts for Bob, because Bob has 4 stars, whereas Carl only has 3. And the bottom ballot counts for Carl, because Carl had 5 stars on this ballot, whereas Bob only had 3. If both candidates have the same number of stars on a ballot, meaning that the voter is happy with either candidate, then that ballot counts as equal support for both candidates. Anyway, whichever candidate ends up with more ballots is the winner. Next slide, please. Finally, in the results step, we show that Bob had more stars than Carl on more ballots, so Bob wins. And that's how star voting works.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve. And a quick run through of the advantages and disadvantages of both systems. So right now we have a single choice electoral system where the candidate that gets the plurality of votes, not the majority of votes, wins. With both star voting and ranked choice voting, both systems allow voters to be more expressive with their choices and therefore less impacted by the spoiler effect, where if I vote for candidate A if I want to vote for candidate A, but candidate A is polling kind of low compared to candidate B, which would be my second choice, then I'm not able to vote for the candidate I truly want to vote for because of the spoiler effect. Think like Green Party in the presidential elections. Both voting systems promote consensus and coalitions of candidates working together, endorsing each other, and as a result, lead to less political polarization. And we've seen this in actual elections that have happened with both ranked choice and star voting. Both systems incentivize voter honesty rather than voting strategically, like compared to single choice. And both allow for eliminating the primary since there are automatic runoffs in both systems. A few disadvantages, potential drawbacks that could come up is that both systems add complexity to getting used to a new voting process. Learning something new, it takes a little bit of time to get used to anything new that you introduce. They both require upgraded software, voting equipment, and candidates and campaign consultants would also need to learn how to run an effective campaign using those new techniques. So those are the main objections that we've seen. So with that, we'll jump into star voting in 10 minutes. Arend, pass the baton over to you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Isaac, and thank you so much, Steve, for the explanation of star voting. Gonna go ahead and steal the screen share. Let's see. Come on. All right. All right. There we are. All right. Does everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Yep.
Excellent. So I'll start off by sharing some of my values, the ones that brought me over to this movement and led me to advocate for star voting specifically. First off, I want to reduce the spoiler effect that happened most famously in the 2000 presidential election, where Nader took votes away from Gore and gave the win to Bush. I believe it should be safe for any candidate, Nader or otherwise, to run without fear of spoiling the election. I also care a lot about reducing the electability bias. In primary elections in particular, I was frustrated that all the dialogue is focused on which candidates are electable for the general rather than who has the best ideas. I believe a candidate's ideas should matter more than their electability, particularly since electability gives an edge to candidates with more money, more institutional backing, and at the same time cuts against women and people of color. And third, I care about reducing polarization. Currently, candidates are incentivized to appeal to the most polarized part of their faction and have very little incentive to build broad appeal. I believe candidates should appeal to all voters and not just their base. Star voting is particularly special in this regard since bringing a voter from your base from a 4-star vote to a 5-star vote is important, but bringing a far-off voter from a 0 to a 1 is equally important and powerful. The good news is that all of these problems are just manifestations of something called vote splitting. So if we can solve that fundamental problem, then all these other issues would also be mitigated. So what is vote splitting? Well, our current system works fine when there's just two candidates. Here we have Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader, and Luke wins with the majority of the votes. But when Luke has more friends on his side, they actually split the vote and give the win to the other side. That problem leads to all the other issues in the previous slide, as well as other issues like candidate gatekeeping, money in politics, and so on and so forth. To fix this, we need a voting system where you can show support for more than one candidate, and that's where systems like STAR and ranked choice voting come into play. I'll start off with ranked choice voting, as that has the most adoption at the moment. As Isaac said, RCV gets a lot right. It's been adopted in a bunch of places. It has the expressive ballot. It reduces the spoiler effect in some cases, allows for limiting the primary, and also allows for, has many cases of positive campaigning. But at the same time, RCV also underdelivers in some critical areas. Exit polls show that voters enjoy expressing their preference on the ranked ballot, but most of those do not get included in the count, even if those could have made a difference. That's why RCV can have the spoiler effect when there are 3 or more viable candidates. And that's also why, when we look at trends across years of using RCV, we see that the candidate pool is not impacted. RCV has not made it safe for more candidates to run, nor do we see more diversity in the candidates who are running. While under-delivering, it also creates new problems. We see voided ballots increase tenfold relative to the status quo, and that hits low-income, marginalized communities the hardest. RCV requires centralized tabulation, which would add complexity and reduce transparency for statewide implementations. I have all my sources listed at the bottom, and I'm happy to go more in depth on any of them during the Q&A. All these problems have long been known in theory, but now there's more and more studies available documenting their consistency across real-world US elections. I want to give more context on the spoiler effect next. The spoiler effect is still pretty rare under RCV. Out of the hundreds of RCV elections in the US, the spoiler effect has only happened 3 times. But whenever it does happen, the impact is massive. Alaska came very close to repealing RCV. They were just a little over 700 votes short. Burlington did repeal RCV, and it took them 10 years to rebuild the movement to readopt it. And Moab was using RCV under a pilot program and opted not to renew. Alaska in particular became a national story. It invoked a partisan response from both sides, with Democrats locking in for RCV and Republicans locking in against it, which is a real shame. Voting reform should not be a partisan issue, and the clear response should be to work together to find an upgrade for the system. Many Republican states proceeded to ban RCV. It's currently banned in 17 states, with 14 of those happening in just the last 3 years. This also included bans in North Dakota and Missouri, where approval voting was also banned through no fault of its own. There's a lot more to say about Alaska, and I made a whole website with animations breaking it down at rcvchangedalaska.com. And one more time, that's rcvchangedalaska.com. This brings us to STAR voting. We've had enough time to see the full impacts of ranked choice voting, and we're ready for a better method that delivers on the vision to fix vote splitting without introducing deal breakers. STAR voting was invented in 2014 when Equal Vote hosted a conference featuring leaders from many voting reform movements. Each camp had their own unique benefits. Ranked choice voting and other ranked methods relied on instant runoffs in order to avoid strategic voting, whereas scoring methods like approval or score voting are simpler to tally and resolve the spoiler effect more fully. Star voting, score then automatic runoff, was born as the perfect hybrid of both worlds. You get the resistance to strategic voting from the ranked methods while also having the simplicity and the spoiler effect mitigation from the scoring camp. Star voting is simple. Just add up the stars in the scoring phase, then add up the votes between the two frontrunners in that automatic runoff phase. It can always be tabulated in just two columns like this, unlike ranked choice voting, which can often require many elimination rounds before a winner is determined. We also see many benefits from just the ballot design. With the star ballot, you get to indicate your second choice as well as how much you like them, whether they're a 1-star candidate, a 4-star candidate, or even a 5-star candidate that's tied for your favorite. Allowing for equal scores allows voters to show support for as many candidates as they like, whereas ranked choice voting limits the voters to the number of columns on the ballot. Under ranked choice voting, giving multiple candidates your first choice will void your ballot, whereas that's totally fine under star voting, giving multiple candidates your favorite. And in fact, under star voting, it's almost impossible to void your ballot. Star voting has excelled in every study where it's been included. This Harvard study simulated tens of thousands of elections under a wide variety of scenarios and measured how often each voting method would pick the candidate that best represented the voters. Each method has both a black dot representing assuming voters are voting honestly, and a gold dot assuming voters are voting strategically. The choose one status quo system comes soundly in last place, and voters have a strong incentive to vote strategically if they want to get results that represent their values. The top two system used here in California is notably better, but comes in second to last place. Ranked choice voting is next with just marginal gains over top two. And if I skip ahead, we see that star voting tops the charts, delivering representative results at the highest rate, regardless of whether voters are operating strategically or honestly. But a voting method is more than just selecting the right winner. The results should also give a clear picture of where the voters stand. We can look at this study from New York City, which asked voters who they wanted for president using a variety of different voting methods. If we compare the current system with first preferences from ranked choice voting, we see pretty much the same results. Obama wins in a landslide with Romney in a distant second and the other candidates trailing behind. Since Obama had more than 50% of the vote, that means RCV wouldn't enter the runoff rounds. So despite the voters providing us so much more information with their rankings, this is all the voters would ever see and the vast majority of rankings would go uncounted. When we look at other methods, the winner is the same, but the narrative is very different. Jill Stein, in particular, went from just a couple of percentage points to all the way above 50% support when voters used the approval or 5-star ballot. Again, this study was in New York City, and we wouldn't expect the same results across the country. But to me, it makes a lot of sense that Jill Stein from the Green Party would be New York's second favorite instead of Romney. And methods like the status quo and ranked choice voting completely hide that fact. In this case, it may not have been enough for it to change the winner, but it still has a huge impact on voters' perception of who is electable for future elections and can give people permission to support those candidates in the future. Our current system has extremely powerful incentives for voters to be strategic, and we need a system with transparent results if we want voters to unlearn that behavior. That's why adopting star voting is so important. Star voting delivers on the vision of voter expression that our greater movement has been fighting for. The 5-star scale is already an intuitive interface that voters use every day, and adopting it means you won't have to worry about vote splitting or spoiler candidates. With star voting, every voter can finally have an equal voice regardless of political party or how many candidates are in their faction. Thank you so much. That's all for me.
Awesome. Thank you, Arndt. Uh, Now we'll jump into ranked choice voting. Uh, Steve, would you like to share your screen?
Yes, I've got to go find the share button. Okay, I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to get ready for sharing a video later. Oh, and I have to tell Zoom that it is okay for me to share video. What does it not like about what I typed? Okay.
There you go. You're good.
Okay, I'm good. Thank you very much. All right, I want to thank Aaron for his explanation of ranked choice voting. I may expand on that. I got to get rid of a little thumbnail that's blocking my view. I may expand on that later, but first I want to do a little bit of level setting. So I want to let you know that there is no such thing as a perfect voting system. It's been mathematically proven that there is no perfect voting system. If there was a perfect voting system, we would all be using it. I am going to post these. You can look these theorems up on the internet. I'm going to post them in the chat so that people can copy and paste them and look them up later if you want. And I'd like to say that perfect voting systems are like perpetual motion machines. They don't exist, but that doesn't stop people from trying to invent them. One can construct pathological cases for each of them, but some have more or worse pathologies than others. So a choice of voting systems boils down to a choice of values. Arendt gave the values that he thought were important. I want to give you the ones that I and my colleagues think are important. We believe that a voting system should, one, support majority rule. That is, if a cohesive majority of voters prefers one candidate over all the others, that candidate should win. It should encourage sincere voting rather than strategic voting. I shouldn't have to worry that voting for my most favorite candidate might help elect my least favorite candidate, nor that indicating a choice for a second favorite will hurt my most favorite. I should not have to engage in lesser of two evils thinking. 3, it should provide incentives that discourage negative campaigning. That is, it should encourage candidates to focus on issues instead of throwing mud at each other. And 4, it should discourage stealth candidates. It should not elect someone who is everyone's second choice but no one's first choice, as that encourages candidates to be bland and hide their true position so as not to offend anyone. This isn't a complete list. I may discuss others in other parts of the presentation. I think ranked choice voting upholds these values better than the alternatives, including star voting. I also want to point out that ranked choice voting is not a new system. It was invented in the 1870s by an MIT professor who called it preferential voting. It was first used in Queensland, Australia in 1893 and went nationwide in Australia in 1919. The Republic of Ireland has been using it since the 1920s, but it is relatively new in the United States. Unfortunately, all STAR has are simulations, and simulations don't reflect real-world conditions. Aaron did go through a brief explanation of ranked choice voting earlier, but different people learn differently. Some learn best by listening, some by seeing, and some by doing. Aaron explained RCV both verbally and by showing it to you, so I'm going to give a brief recap and then let you experience it. With ranked choice voting, you rank the candidates in order of preference. Your first choice is who you really want to win. Your second choice is who you would want to win if your first two choices can't win, and so on. Ballots are sorted by first choice. If someone has a majority, they win. Otherwise, we eliminate the last place candidate and count all the ballots again. If your first choice is still in the running, your ballot stays with your first choice. But if your first choice was eliminated, then your ballot moves to your second choice. Now, if someone has a majority, they win. Otherwise, repeat the process. Now, I'm going to skip this video, but I'm going to post the link to it in the chat so you can look at it later and do that. Oops, wrong thing. My copy did not work. Let me copy again and now paste. There we go. It's not the right link either. Where did that? Oh, I lost the link. I apologize for that.
You
I'll
can
post
put
it.
it in later, Steve.
I will
So-
put it later. But it's a short video prepared by Minnesota Public Radio. Since ranked choice voting simulates a staggered series of runoff elections, it's sometimes called instant runoff voting, and that's the phrase that Minnesota Public Radio uses. They also restrict voters in the video to only ranking 3 candidates, but modern systems allow many more rankings. And I don't have time to take you through a ranked choice voting election, but I do want you to experience. So what I've just pasted into the chat is the link to the Candytown election that Aaron showed you. So you can click on that at your leisure and cast your ballots. I do want to show you what that ballot does look like. So I'm going to click on that myself. There we go. And I'm going to change it and share to what that ballot, to show you how you would rank your ballots on that. There we go. There we go. Can you see this? You rank your candidates, who's your first. 6 Snickers might be my first choice, Kit Kat my second, Milky Way
Steve,
third.
I can't see your screen. Are you trying to share?
I am sharing.
Yeah, it's showing rank your vote on mine. Are others not getting it?
I'll do
I
it.
saw
I'll do
it.
the share again to make sure it shows. Sometimes there's a little bit of an issue
Might have just been a delay.
when you start.
Also, Steve, Arend dropped the link to the video explanation as well.
Oh, thank you, Aaron. I appreciate that. Somehow it got removed from my script. Sour
Yeah, we
Patch.
can see it.
Okay, good. So here I've done my rankings, and I'm going to submit. And if you click on the link, you can do your rankings, and then you click on preliminary results, and you get the same thing that Aaron had shown. Okay. Now let me skip. All right. Now, also another point I want to make is that the voting system affects how people campaign. In the Candytown election, we were voting for inanimate objects, but in real elections, we vote for people, and the voting rules affect candidate behavior. We know that plurality elections encourage negative campaigning. For example, if Isaac and I are running for dog catcher, and if I throw mud at Isaac, saying that he kicks puppies and drowns kittens, that might not encourage you to vote for me, but it might discourage you from voting for Isaac, and that helps me. But in a ranked choice voting election, in order to win, I might need to be the second choice of people who rank Isaac first. So I'm not going to throw mud at Isaac. Instead, I'm going to tell people where I agree with Isaac and where I disagree and keep it focused on the issues. And this isn't just a hypothetical. I want to show you a video that was produced by 3 leading candidates out of a field of 8 in a 2018 Oakland City Council election. So let me go back to sharing screen and pick my, let me see. All right, I got to go there first. I got to stop the share. It's not showing the right thing. There we go. Okay, got to go there. Got to go to Zoom. Got to go to share. Got to go here. And now I click share. Okay, you should all be seeing a blank video, which I'm going to play.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Pam Harris. I'm Nayeli Maxon.
I'm Shane Tao.
We're running for Oakland City Council District 4.
For the past 16 years, this seat has been held by dynamic women.
We are 3 well-qualified candidates for City Council.
We are mothers, public servants, and community leaders.
Pam has 20 years of nonprofit finance experience. She can manage any budget.
Nayeli has worked in the District 4 office. She knows the district's issues inside and out.
Shane has worked for the City Council for 5 years. She has the experience to get results.
We're asking for your support on November 6th.
This is a ranked choice election. Vote for us 1, 2, or 3.
You can learn more about us on our websites.
Vote for positive leadership,
Collaborative leadership,
Women's leadership.
Okay. Now, when was the last time you saw competing candidates extol the virtues of their opponents? Only one of those 3 could win, yet they each praised each other. And it worked as well, as one of them did win, and it was because supporters of the others ranked the ultimate winner as their second or third choice. The last thing I want to show you are the exit polls that we do after each ranked choice voting election. Let me go here. Great. And I'm going to paste the link to this in the chat as well. Where did the chat go? Oh, there it went. Okay. And I'm going to share my screen so you can see that. Okay. Okay. So every time ranked choice voting is implemented in a new location, we do exit polling to see how well the system was received. So this is a list of a lot of the exit polls that have been done, and you can. I'm not going to go through them because I don't have time, but you can go through them at your leisure. If you click on this link here, you get a summary of those of those uh, of those exit polls, and if you click on these links, you will then get the actual exit poll of that that was done. So, for example, this is the Alaskan exit poll, and 84% of Alaskans reported that they found ranked choice voting to be simple, and the majority liked the idea that they could rank multiple candidates from the same party in the election. So you can look at these exit polls at your leisure. And that is my presentation on ranked choice voting. Thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Steve. And now we're going to enter the fact check portion of our discussion. So a couple ground rules quickly. There will be 4 facts, 2 facts for both STAR and for ranked choice voting. Each fact has been checked, and both speakers have conceded that those facts are true. Each speaker will have 45 seconds to present the fact, and then the other speaker will have 90 seconds to respond with a footnote. All right, ready? And fact 1, STAR voting can violate the majority criterion. Steve?
Yes, in some cases, a candidate who has the most stars on a majority of the ballots can lose. And if you go to the next slide, which should be my giving some context. Yes, this is a scaled down version of the example that I used in my explanation of STAR voting. I basically took the number of voters and divided by 100. So V1 through V3 would represent the 300 voters who like Ann best, and V4 and V5 represent the 200 voters who like Carl and Dave best. Carl and Bob have the highest scores and advance to the automatic runoff, which Bob wins 3-2. However, a clear majority, 3-2 or 60% of the voters, prefer Ann to all other candidates, yet Ann loses. This cannot happen under ranked choice voting. A candidate who is ranked first by a clear majority of the voters will always win. There's a second point on this slide, but I'm not going to address that right now, but we can talk about it during the Q&A. So that is the fact that I wanted to present, that a candidate who has a clear majority of support can lose under ranked choice, under STAR voting. And now I turn it over to Aaron to give his counterpoint.
Thank you so much, Steve. So my footnote slash counterpoint is that first off, it's very rare for STAR voting to violate the majority candidate, the majority criterion. The only way a candidate can have a majority of the 5-star support without being one of the top 2 score getters is if that candidate was kind of polarizing, receiving very low scores from the rest of the voters, while other candidates had decent scores across the board. In this scenario that Steve has shown, you could even make the case that a candidate with 3s and 4s across the board has a stronger mandate to represent the public than ones who got 5s from majority and 0s from everybody else. Second, majority is a nuanced word, but the literal majority criterion is defined very, very narrowly. Elections don't always have candidates with majority support. If you have 3 polarized factions that don't rank or score each other, then you can't produce a winner with a true majority regardless of the voting method. You can also have multiple majorities. If I ask the room, raise your hand if you like pizza, raise your hand if you like Mexican food, raise your hand if you like Thai food, I think we'd have multiple majorities. To see how methods do across many scenarios, it's better to look at the average. And as we saw in that Harvard study that I presented, STAR voting is more consistent than other voting methods at selecting winners that best represent the people. As Steve said, voting criteria is kind of like a perpetual motion machine. It's hard to you can't get one that solves all the criteria. Discussing edge cases and voting criteria is kind of like comparing race cars and look by looking at their individual stats. It might be helpful to look at factors such as their weight and turn radius, but ultimately, if you want to know which car is better, you should just run them around the track a bunch of times to see their average lap time. That lets you capture those criteria and how they translate to actual performance instead of trying to guess which things are most important. I will link to the study I'm referring to, and that also includes many other studies, an overview of many other studies for your reference.
All right. Thank you, Steve and Arend. Fact number 2, ranked choice voting does not guarantee your vote will transfer to your next choice.
Yes. And to add my framing onto that, for example, if your favorite makes it to the final round and then loses, you'll never have an opportunity for your second and third rankings to matter. This impacts the narrative of the election results since a huge chunk of rankings aren't reflected in the outcome, and sometimes it can also impact the winner of the election. In Alaska, the candidate preferred to all others lost because the second choices he received were never counted toward him. By contrast, star voting counts all the data. When you see the scoring results in star voting, this includes all the stars that the candidate received. So 100% of your vote will be counted, and that gives a much clearer picture of each candidate's support.
All
And
right, Steve, counterpoint.
footnote to that. Well, yeah, that's true. But again, that's what the voter wanted. They didn't want their second and third choices to hurt their first choice. The fact that their second and third choices were eliminated while their first choice stayed in the running means that their second and third choices didn't have enough support to win. If they had changed their rankings and made their second or third choice their first choice instead, they still would have lost. I think my next fact will show why not letting your second or third rankings count unless your first ranking is eliminated is better than the alternative.
Whoops.
Fact 3.
Okay. Fact 3.
Yeah, under star voting, a sincere score for your second favorite candidate can cause your most favorite candidate to lose. And this cannot happen under ranked choice voting. Next slide, please. Yeah, let's go back to the 5-voter example that I used in fact number 1. Anne lost because her supporters sincerely gave their second favorite candidate, Bob, 4 stars each. Even if just one of those 5 voters, say V1, had insincerely given Bob no stars, Anne would have made the automatic runoff instead of Bob and would have won. Under ranked choice voting, sincerely ranking your second favorite candidate second cannot hurt your first choice, as your vote stays with your first choice unless and until your first choice is eliminated. Presented with a system such as STAR, where giving sincere scores to second favorite candidates can hurt your most favorite candidate, voters quickly learn to stop voting sincerely and will start voting strategically. And that's my footnote.
Arend?
That was
I'm sorry,
so that was the
fact.
that was the fact. And now I'll give the footnote. Yeah, okay.
Sorry.
No problem. No problem. So what Steve just described is called the later no harm criteria, and RCV passes this, but it also fails the opposite honest favorite criteria, or also known as favorite betrayal, meaning that under ranked choice voting, ranking a second favorite can't hurt your favorite, but that doesn't actually mean it's safe to rank your honest favorite first. Because your vote isn't guaranteed to transfer, it's sometimes safer to dishonestly rank your compromise pick over your favorite in order to avoid your worst case scenario. There's a trade-off here. It's actually, again, with the Arrow's theorem, it's impossible for a voting method to pass all methods. And often fully passing one criteria means that you tend to do really poorly on can mean you do very poorly on another. So instead of trying to get perfect on any one criteria, star voting is designed to prioritize doing well across the board without necessarily reaching 100% any one of them. This also points back to the average performance of the voting method. The Harvard study included models for sincere and strategic voting, and found that STAR would perform very well regardless, and therefore it doesn't incentivize dishonest voting. It also compares different specific strategies, including the one that Steve alluded to, and it finds that that strategy of burying your second or third favorite is more likely to backfire than it is to help. Under STAR voting, honesty is the best policy. For RCV, we can even see strategic voting we can even see this dynamic in real
All
elections.
right. Our
Uh,
end, we've reached time
all right,
for the 90 seconds.
I'll just post the link to what I was going to refer to about strategic voting in Alaska.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. And then fact number 4, study by Pettigrew and Radley found that voided ballots are 10 times more likely under RCV than single choice voting, and error rates are highest in low income and marginalized communities.
Yes. So I'll post a link for this as well for people to reference. And this is expected since it's just easier to make errors on an RC ballot than a star voting ballot. If you give multiple candidates your first choice ranking, then under RCV, then your vote is immediately voided. Other errors like skipping columns also have the potential to void your ballot in some jurisdictions. Overcoming this requires a huge investment in voter education, and this has proven to be a challenge since even in places where RCV has been used for a long time, they still have high error rates in their lower income communities. Star voting is much more intuitive, and voter education will be a much easier lift since those error scenarios don't exist with Star. And voters already have that familiarity with the 5-star scale.
Counterpoint, Steve?
Okay. Well, the fact that I agreed to here was that the study does exist and that is the conclusion that the authors made. But it is a very flawed study. It is so flawed that 2 other academics, Alan Parry, an associate professor of mathematics at Utah Valley University, and John Kidd, an assistant professor of statistics at Utah Valley University, published a critique of it. I will post a link to their report in the chat, and then I'm going to actually show it. So there's the link. Let me queue up my browser and go back to Zoom and share my screen. Someone else is sharing. Oh, great. I got to do it again. There we go. Yeah, this is the paper that found deficiencies in recent research on ranked choice voting ballot error rates, and they specifically refer to the Pettigrew study and let me find Pettigrew in this thing. Yeah, Pettigrew and Radley, and they also refer to the Cormack study that Aaron had in one of his footnotes. Among other things, Pettigrew and Radley classify things as errors that don't invalidate a ballot, such as skipping a rank. The authors even acknowledge that some of what they call errors are likely an indication of voter preference rather than a true error. And other studies have shown that the error rates on ranked choice voting ballots are no different than the error rates on single choice ballots. And that is true for both minority voters who do make more errors on ballots, but they make more errors on single choice ballots as well. And it tracks by education level as well. It basically doesn't matter what the demographic is, you'll find an equal number of.
We're at time, Steve. Sorry.
Sorry. Okay.
Thank you.
I'll stop my share.
All right. Great. And now we've reached the Q&A portion of the presentation. So please raise your hand if you have a question, but I'm going to first go in order of the questions that were asked in the chat, and I'll pose those to the panelists.
I don't know if you see Carolina's got her hand up.
I do. Okay, great. I'm just going to check the questions in the chat really quick. How can RCV still spoil? I think that was answered by the presentation. But if there's additional questions there, please raise your hand.
Well, I would like to respond. If you go to the website that Aaron showed, he had the normally you think of a spoiler as someone who gets fewer votes than the person whose election they spoiled. But in his example, he actually says that someone who had the second most number of votes spoiled the election for the person who had the third most number of votes, which to me is counterintuitive.
Thanks, Steve. Aaron, would you
Um,
like to apply?
can you repeat the question one more time? Sorry, I was distracted reading through the chat.
How does RCV spoil the election? Or how could
Yeah.
RCV still spoil?
So I define the spoiler as when a candidate runs who has no chance of winning, and by the act of them running, they change the winner. So in that Alaska election that Steve brought up, the Sarah Palin ran, and she could not have beaten either of the other candidates head to head. But by running, she caused the other Republican to get eliminated earlier. And that's what allowed the Democrat to win. If Sarah Palin hadn't have run, then the Republican with the consensus candidate would have won. He was ranked top two on 70% of ballots. And as Steve said, um, like he did have third place when you look at the first choice rankings, but the value of having a more expressive ballot is that we should be able to also consider the second and third choice rankings, which it doesn't do, or it didn't do for that candidate in that case.
Right. Thanks, Aaron. Chris had a question. How can we talk about what really happens in STAR voting elections if there haven't been any?
I can take that. Um,
Okay.
so when we were all of the shared qualities that Isaac listed in the beginning, we talked about. Me and Steve talked about, and for the quality of um, consensus and positive campaigning, I was referring to. I'm going to post a link. This ad that was posted in an approval voting election. So it was an approval voting election, and candidates came in and um, said like uh, support, approve of both me and this other candidate. So star voting has similar incentives as approval voting. So from that, it's fair to assume that star voting would also have that.
Okay. Steve, would you like to address that at
I'm
all
sorry,
either?
can you repeat the question?
Yes. So it was how can we talk about what really happens in STAR voting elections if there haven't been any?
Right, I understand. Yeah, and he's using approval voting as a proxy in this case, where you did have approval candidates put out a joint mailer, and presumably the suggestions that candidates under star voting might do the same, and they might. But I want to talk a little bit about what I would call symmetric campaigning versus asymmetric campaigning. If I'm running in a ranked choice voting election, and say Isaac is also running in that election, and we decide to cross endorse each other, I'm going to tell my supporters rank me first and rank Isaac second, and Isaac is going to tell his supporters to rank him first and rank me second. It's very symmetric. But as we saw under star voting, and this is also true with approval voting, if I tell my supporters to give both me and Isaac 5 stars, that's going to hurt me. I'm actually going to tell my supporters, well, give me 5 stars and give Isaac no stars. And I'm going to tell Isaac's supporters, hey, Isaac and I have cross endorsed each other. So if you're going to give Isaac 5 stars, give me 5 stars too. It's asymmetric campaigning. Now, organizations that support both candidates might tell their members to give both candidates 5 stars. And you're going to see that kind of symmetry by organizations, but I don't think you're going to see that kind of symmetry from the candidates. And even though you did have those candidates put out a joint mailer under approval voting, where they basically said, approve me, and the person next to them said, approve me as well. When they're actually talking to their supporters, I don't think that's what they're going to be saying.
And I see Chris has a follow-up question in the chat. I can respond
Yeah.
to that.
Well,
So
before we take
okay.
the follow-up questions, I do want to just be mindful that Carolina and Patrick have had their hands up,
Totally.
but maybe then we could jump back. I just want to be mindful of time.
Absolutely.
Carolina, what's your question?
I have a couple really quick ones. Can either of you or both of you talk about the cost of retooling voting equipment? And the second question has to do with, I didn't understand when you spoke about how some votes are not guaranteed to transfer. So if you could,
Oh, when who spoke about that? Was that Steve or
I think that was me.
Art? Okay.
Yeah.
Um, okay. Yeah, so for this well, maybe Steve, do you want to take the first question Carolina had because Aaron went first last time?
Yeah. Basically, your ballot stays with your first choice until your first choice is eliminated, at which point it goes to the next choice on your ballot who is still in the running. And what Aaron was saying in his example is that, suppose there's 4 candidates running, myself, Isaac, Aaron, and David. And let's say, voter puts me down first, puts Aaron second, Isaac third, and David fourth. Okay. And suppose Isaac ends up with in the first round has the fewest votes. So he's eliminated, but my ballot will still stay with me because I'm still in the running. And then in the next round, Aaron's eliminated, but my ballot stays with me because I'm still in the running. And then in the final round, it turns out that David has more votes than I do. So David ends up winning. Well, if my ballot never transferred to my second or third choices because they were eliminated while I was still in the running. And that's the way that ranked choice voting works. There are people, like Arendt thinks that it's important to take into effect that there was a second and third choice on my ballot, and somehow that should be taken into consideration. Star voting does take into consideration how many stars, I don't know, star ballot, for example, someone might give me 5 stars. They would give Aaron 4, they would give Isaac 3, and David 2. And star voting takes all of that into consideration. The board account, which I think is used to select most valuable player, is a similar system where they give points to the rankings. But as I showed in my example, when you have a system that takes into consideration lower preferences, that can cause your lower preferences to hurt your first choice. And when voters realize that, oh my God, I hurt my first choice by giving some stars to my second choice, I'm going to start giving 5 stars to my first choice and 0 stars to everybody else. And you're going to see that after a few cycles with approval voting, where voters who really support one candidate are going to approve that candidate only and give no approval to any other candidate. And they're both going to devolve into a plurality. Whoever gets the most votes wins, which is what they are supposedly theoretically better than. With ranked choice voting, you don't see that devolution into bullet voting. I'm going to rank my favorite first and give no rankings to nobody else, to anybody else, because it's not going to hurt my first choice to give a second, a third, a fourth choice ranking.
Yeah, and Carolina also asked about election costs. Did you?
Oh, election costs. Yeah. It's very hard to get numbers out of the vendors. For one thing, they basically respond to requests for proposals, and so they put in bids. One of the few data points we have is from Santa Clara County, where when they put in Dominion responded to, well, there were 3 vendors who responded to Santa Clara County's request for proposals for equipment that could accommodate ranked choice voting. And Dominion won the bid because they actually demonstrated their ranked choice voting capabilities. The other 2 vendors said they'd have it, but didn't demonstrate it. And when the county negotiated the contracts, that's actually where the pricing it happens in negotiations. They were able to get Dominion to agree that Dominion wouldn't start charging for the ranked choice voting software module until Santa Clara County starts using it. And if you look at the contract, the cost of the ranked choice voting module was about like a 5% add-on to the entire to the base cost of the system. So that's about the only data point we have that it's a 5% increase. No vendor, well, I don't know, Aaron, I guess I should let you respond if any vendor has actually been asked to produce STAR voting equipment and how much they would charge.
Yeah, we've had conversations, although we also don't have a lot of specific quotes. I will say that I feel like ranked choice voting and star voting, their implementation is going to be similar in the sense that it's a software upgrade, similar work to be done by the vendors. Although I expect star voting to be easier since there's fewer error scenarios that the vendor would need to consider and like give feedback on. Yeah, for Carolina's other question about the second and third rankings, I'll give an example in the context of the recent New York election. So I don't remember the exact numbers, but Mamdani had like 40 something, Cuomo had 30 something percent, and then everybody else was kind of trailing. So if somebody ranked from Mamdani first, then that's kind of playing in their favor that their second and third rankings were counted. Their favorite one, they don't want their second and third rankings to count. That's kind of the philosophy of ranked choice voting. But that flip side is that if somebody ranked Cuomo first, that's 30 something percent of voters, none of them had their first choice win, and none of them got to have their second and third choices matter. So to me, that's kind of breaking a promise to those Cuomo voters. And if we were able to see the full rankings and have that impact the results, the story here would be very different. Looking at the rankings, Brad Lander would have actually beaten Andrew Cuomo head to head. More people ranked Brad Lander higher on their ballot than Cuomo. Even Adrian Adams would have even more people ranked Adrian Adams higher on their ballot than Cuomo. So we're really robbed of seeing the full picture by those rankings not impacting the result.
Yeah, well, that's a perfect example of how ranked choice voting is supposed to work.
Okay, thank you both. Next question, we have Patrick.
Sure, thank
Patiently
you.
waiting.
Yep. Everyone hear me? Good? Okay.
Yep, we hear
Cool,
you.
great. Thank you both for doing this. It's very interesting stuff. I was on a call about ranked choice voting about a year or two ago, and we were going around introducing ourselves. One question we were asked was, why are you here? I mentioned that I was interested in learning more about alternatives to first past the post like RCV and STAR. And an RCV advocate on the call made a comment about how RCV is better in California than STAR because RCV doesn't require an amendment to the California Constitution to implement like STAR does. I couldn't find anything online that supported or discredited that. So I guess I'm just asking both of you if there's any merit to that or if the guy didn't know what he was talking about.
I would like the name of that person because that's not true.
Okay.
The California Constitution gives charter cities plenary authority over the way they conduct their elections. And if a charter city, such as Los Angeles, for example, wanted to use star voting, they could amend it into their charter. Dean Logan would then have to pay Smartmatic to apply that upgrade to their system, just as he would have to pay Smartmatic since VSAP is a homegrown system for Los Angeles County, and he'd have to pay Smartmatic to put ranked choice voting into it as well. But as far as I'm aware, there is no constitutional impediment to any alternative system. And I'd like to know the name of the person who you can in private.
I'll see if I can dig it up. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate it, both of you. Thank you.
Yeah, what they might have been referring to is something like I've heard people talk about the Secretary of State signing off on ranked choice voting or something similar to that. And yes, ranked choice voting certainly has a head start. But I would argue that we've seen the track record of RCV and we've seen that an upgrade is absolutely necessary. And that's why, that's why I'm pushing for STAR.
Great. Thank you both.
Yeah.
So thanks, Patrick and panelists. John, you're up.
Hi. First off, thanks. You guys are extremely well informed. Much appreciated. I appreciate the dialogue of everyone here who's interested in the democratic system. Yay. Uh, but I guess my question is like, is it true from both of you that you'd take either system, right? Like either system is better than the one that we have now. So, and I don't mean to be, I'm not saying that one isn't better than the other, and I'm not sure yet which is better than the other. I think it depends on your viewpoint. But my point is, like, if if there's an argument so much between which one's better, won't that hinder the adoption of some kind of multiple candidate voting?
Arnd, thank you for your question, John. Arnd, do you want to take that one first?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that's on the top of a lot of people's minds. So I think I'm glad that that was asked. And you're right. It's a high bar to clear to adopt something new when something else already has the momentum. The reason I believe it's worth it to upgrade to Star is because we're seeing that under ranked choice voting, it's under-delivered on a lot of its promises and also introduces new issues that didn't exist under the previous system. And I'll give an example. After the spoiler effect happened in Alaska, where there were two Republicans running and they split the vote, like despite being promised that that wouldn't happen, that still happened, and that that had knock-on effects. In the following election, candidates didn't feel safe to run multiple people under their party, and we saw 12 candidates drop out from the. So Alaska has a ranked choice voting general and a choose one primary, and we saw candidates make it to the ranked choice voting general, but then because they were worried about vote splitting and the spoiler effect, they dropped out, similar to what they would do under the current system. So, in my view, it's a real shame to go through all the effort to adopt a new system only to see some of the old problems occur, and that makes it much harder to upgrade it from there. So, that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, the problem, I know Howard likes to use the Alaska example a lot. And I don't know what promise he was talking about that the Republicans would cross endorse each other and they would rank, Palin first and Begich second or vice versa. Um, People who've actually studied Alaska politics understand that by and large, the Begich people couldn't stand Sarah Palin, and the Sarah Palin supporters couldn't stand Begich, most of them. And so that's why many of Begich's supporters ranked the Democrat Mary Peltola above Sarah Palin, which is why she lost. She also didn't take advantage of it. She did not go out to Begich supporters and ask them to rank her second, where we have seen candidates who use that strategy, like in New York City, where Mamdani went to, what was the guy's name, Ladner, and they cross
Lander.
endorsed each other, and they did a cooperative campaign. And so Mamdani went to supporters of other candidates that he felt had similar values to him, and asked those supporters to rank him second. And that's what we saw in that Oakland video that I showed you. Sometimes that strategy works, sometimes it doesn't. But candidates who don't reach out to the supporters of their opponents don't do very well under ranked choice voting, whereas candidates who do reach out do well. And again, what we saw in Alaska, that didn't happen. Now, when Peltola did win in that special election, and again in the regular election, but in the re-election campaign that happened in 2024, she lost under that same system, and a Republican was elected. And you still hear, because Donald Trump made a big deal about it, you still hear a lot of Republicans grumbling ranked choice voting is terrible. But it worked for them this time around.
I'll just post my article again for people to see the deep dive there. I'll confirm that what Steve was saying, there was no formal cross endorsement in that election, but even if there was, it wouldn't have been enough to kind of resolve the spoiler effect issue.
Well, if there'd been cross endorsement, I think a lot of the Begich people, more Begich people would have listed Peltola. I would have listed Palin second, and that's what he did.
There's an article on the website simulating what would happen if all of the Palin people supported Begich. And yeah, I'll just leave people at that to
You need
look
it
at
the other
it.
way around. You need the Begich people to support Palin, which they didn't. And that's what cost her the election. Because Palin got more first choices than Begich did.
I'll let my article stand. Yeah.
I understand.
Since we have a little bit of time, I mean, do you want to walk through the article, Arend, for the next 7 minutes? Unless anyone else has questions that we can answer. If so, please raise your hand.
Bruce, I don't know if you're raising your hand or.
Okay, Jonathan has a question.
Oh, no, never mind. He shook his head. Okay.
Hi, again, thank you both for presenting the merits of each system. I kind of went through this process in Connecticut when we were looking at various alternatives to ranked choice voting. But one of the question I have is, have there been any sort of studies, they would be, I guess, simulations to see whether voters understand how to vote under each of the systems? The one thing I think that's interesting under star voting is, well, granted, it seems like there's less of an opportunity for spoiled ballots. That doesn't necessarily mean that people are voting correctly in the sense that they understand how they're supposed to vote. And so maybe that's a little semantics. But I guess the basic question is, have there been studies that explore whether people understand how they should vote under the different systems?
Yeah, so what you're getting at is, does the voter intent line up with how their ballot's being interpreted?
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's always tricky to look at. With star voting, having the zero on the ballot, I think adds a lot of clarity, because that shows that that's going to be your least favorite, and then you should go to the 5 stars for your most favorite. And I had more thoughts in response to that, but now I'm dropping. Oh, and another thing is, there's when you look at error rates, like when Steve was responding to the research that showed like error rate, voided ballots increasing tenfold under ranked choice voting versus the status quo. That looked at ballots that were voided as well as ballots that had errors on them that were able to be resolved. Because sometimes a voter can have an error on their ballot, but it gets like resolved in one way or another. And if somebody in California, if somebody gives a first rank and a fifth rank, then that fifth rank will move up to their second choice. But that may or may not be what that voter intended. You could easily think of a voter imagining that fifth rank being their very last choice that they absolutely don't want. So yeah, there's difficulty in interpreting voter intent, and that's why different jurisdictions with ranked choice voting would have different rules for handling a ballot like that. But yeah, I would argue that star voting, there's less ambiguity.
I'm going to repost the link to the exit surveys, and you can go through those at your leisure. It is true that every successful rollout of ranked choice voting has included an intensive voter education effort as part of that, because it's something new. And it takes a few election cycles for people to get used to a new way of voting. And we work not just on educating the voters as to how, as to what ranking means, but we also educate the candidates. So you will see candidates who will say, rank me first, second, third, fourth, and fifth, even though that doesn't help the candidate at all. So it's important that we do candidate education as well as voter education. And we do intensive voter education when ranked choice voting is being implemented the very first time. As a matter of fact, the city of Eureka has voted to go to ranked choice voting. They'll be having their first ranked choice voting election for Eureka City Council in November 2026. And the registrar of voters for Humboldt County is so excited about that. and also wants to make sure that the election is a successful one and that no mistakes are made, that he invited a whole bunch of experts from the Ranked Choice Voting Resource Center, myself, from what's it called? Gosh, the organization that Grace Ramsey is with.
Rank the vote.
Not Rank the Vote. It's
Democracy Rising.
Thank you, Democracy Rising. And other and local advocates as well, to basically do a tabletop exercise where we went through the voter education materials he was planning to use, and we made suggestions to improve those voter education materials. And we went through how they were planning to report the results, and we made suggestions on improving how to report the results, and how to do the 1% manual tally that is required by California law after every election to make sure that there were no errors in the voting equipment. And so that happened this past August, at the end of August. And it shows that, when you've got a dedicated registrar who wants to do a good job, that it can happen. And we're really looking forward to the November 2026 Eureka elections. Oh, thank you, Celia, for posting the link to Democracy Rising in the chat. As a matter of fact, during our debrief session on our last day, as we went around the room, every one of us, except of course for Grace, because she's too modest, but we basically told Juan Carlos, hire Grace, hire Grace, hire Grace, let her manage voter education and candidate education campaigns.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve. Larry, final question of the evening. Please go ahead.
Thank you. The one thing, when it comes to voter education, one of the things that we're talking about lately is we as Americans we're trained very much in our athletics, and we love the World Series. We love March Madness and its tournament effect. And it just seems to be that ranked choice voting most closely models that kind of competition. And therefore, it is much more easy for Americans to adopt their thinking about voting if with a ranked choice model that, okay, there's X amount of things here. And we're going more and more towards it too, I might say. Look at college football. They used to determine a champion with this sports writers and coaches poll. And now what have they gone to? They've gone to an actual playoff system in order to determine a champion. So if we adopt this into our election system, I think we're going to have a calming effect because everybody had a shot, but it will help lower the temperature in our political discourse, I believe. Commentary welcome, Steve and Art.
What was your question?
My question is, what do you think of that
I can start if you want. So you're saying that the you prefer ranked choice voting because you think it mirrors what Americans are already excited about in terms of tournament bracket style play in sports.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think if you're talking about which style would appeal more to voters, you can look at it in terms of the ballot design and also how it's tabulated. So I would say if I focus on the ballot first, then voters, like people may rank things every day. Like people will say, oh, I like this one first, this one second, this one third, but they don't rank things on a Scantron every day. That's kind of not the natural interface for ranking. Whereas with star voting, people give 0 to 5 ratings all the time, and the Scantron format that would be on their ballot exactly mirrors what people are already used to from the scale. And then I think to your the examples you were giving were more related to the tabulation, that runoff style tabulation from ranked choice voting. And from what the ranked choice voting elections I've followed, one of the issues it has with the tabulation is it kind of functions as a little bit of a black box for voters. On election day, the news outlets will say, "Here's the first choice preferences," and then there's kind of a black box with the tabulation. Like the election nerds can see it, but I don't think the public follows that very closely. And then once that tabulation is complete, the outlets will report, "Here's what the final runoff was between the two head-to-head people." With star voting, that initial results and that like runoff, that's representative of the entire process. There's no like in between step. So I think for voter transparency, that's yeah, a big value of star voting.
I just want to say that, a star voting ballot and a ranked choice voting ballot are both grids. So, they put the same burden on the hardware and software. So I would disagree a little bit with what Aaron said about the Scantron versus Star. But yes, Aaron's correct. I mean, people look at Yelp reviews. People are used to giving stars, number stars, kind of thing out to that. But people are also used to ranking things, and frankly, Larry, your question was really more your opinion of you prefer ranked choice voting to star, which I personally agree with. But what I wanted to go with on another point though is that stars or scores are hard to compare because what I might consider a 3, someone else might consider a 2, and someone else might consider a 4. So it's really hard to compare those things. Whereas with rankings, it's clear what my first choice is, my second choice is my second choice, my third choice is my third choice, and your second choice is your second choice, and your third choice is your third choice. So one of the problems I have with stars is that the scores aren't really comparable. I mean, that might be one of the reasons why when they're scoring in the Olympics, ice skating, for example, they throw out the highest and lowest score and only look at the ones that are left. To try to get rid of those kinds of effects of scores not being comparable. You can't do that, obviously, with star voting. You wouldn't want to do that.
Ren made a good point, too, about for example, if we're doing a governor's race within a state, when you come back in with the original results, we'll have the original results on first night, but we're going to have to consolidate everything to get the final result especially if we were doing ranked choice. And so there would be that speculation, almost like in a sporting thing of, okay, here's the initial results. These people are definitely going to be eliminated. So how are their voters going to vote? It's going to drive some interest in the process that we certainly don't have now with the first past the post. We need to get rid of first past the post. So
clearly, and I think both Aaron and I agree that both of our systems are much better than first past the post. We just disagree as to which one is better than the other.
But how amazing that you guys took the time to do it in such a friendly manner, to go through and to civilly discuss what you didn't like and create facts and counter. I mean, I know the three of you put a lot of time and effort into designing it, so just wanted to encourage everyone to give you applause or hands up or 2 stars or first choice or whatever sort of recognition you want to give. Isaac,
Awesome.
anything else?
No, I think we just about covered it. Thank you so much, everyone, for being so engaged, and especially thank you to Steve and to Aaron for giving this amazing presentation and discussion about the 2 different voting systems. I definitely learned a lot, even though I've been fairly familiar with these systems, and I think the audience definitely did as well. So thank you so much for joining for this spirited discussion.
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody, for your engagement, and especially Steve. Thank you so much. It was great working with you to get this prepared.
And and Aaron, same to you, because of all of the work you did in preparing that deck.
Thank you, everybody.